Kang the Conqueror is just days away from making his big screen debut, and I am so excited, both because I'm simply just a fan of the character and I'm really looking forward to what is obviously just the beginning of this saga that we go through with that character in the MCU. Plus, I really felt like Jonathan Majors just nailed the role in the few minutes that he had on the small screen in the Loki TV show. And so I'm super pumped to see what he does with this character on the big screen. And so to celebrate, I thought I would do another Character Keys video where I talk about 5 keys at 5 different price levels, so that if you are also a fan of this character, then you can find a cool key to add to your collection no matter what your budget. So first of all, if I had $5, I would be looking to get a copy of Kang the Conqueror #1. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I am a huge fan of getting the first solo series for characters. Not only do I think that they're just basically must-haves for true fans of whatever character we're talking about, but also I like those books because they usually gain value over time, because as fans of the character begin to get priced out of first appearances or other more valuable books, then they start looking to the first solo series as a more affordable key to add to their collection, which of course increases the demand for those books. And whenever you have increased demand, then the price of those books go up. All right, if I had $10, I'd be looking to get a copy of Avengers Forever #9, which contains the definitive origin of Kang. Now, of course, pretty much every character in comics has a really convoluted history where there's been retcons and a lack of continuity. And that convolutedness exponentially grows when you have characters like Kang who have lots of different variants and deal with time travel and the multiverse. And so he's a super complicated character. But this, at least as of right now, is considered to be his definitive origin. And so I think it's a great introductory book to get to know the Kang character. And again, just a neat one to add to your collection. And I'm sure, somewhere down the line, even this story is going to get retconned. But for now, it is his origin story. All right, if I had $30 to spend, I'd be looking to pick up a copy of Avengers Annual #2, which contains the first appearance of one of many of Kang's identities, the Scarlet Centurion. And what I like about this book is that I think it's the most affordable of some of the early identities of Kang, and one that I think has a pretty good chance to show up at the MCU at some point. I mean, it's really going to be interesting to find out how many Kangs we're introduced to, but I think some of these early ones will probably be ones that we visit. I mean, certainly there's ones that are more likely than the Scarlet Centurion, but I do think he'll pop up at some point. And when that happens, I expect this book to climb in value quite a bit, at least maybe a short-term spike. But in addition to that, it just contains a really fun story for any Avengers fan, because in it, Kang plucks the original Avengers team out of one corner of the multiverse to fight against the new Avengers team in the mainstream Marvel timeline. And so it just has this fun battle where you can kind of say, well, who is the best Avengers, that original team or these new characters? And it has obviously just an awesome battle cover between those two squads. And so just a great book for Kang fans and for Avengers fans. Next, we're going to take quite a jump in price as we talk about Fantastic Four #19, which you can find a pretty nice copy, usually for around $300. And this book contains the first appearance of Rama Tut. And so this is a character that the Fantastic Four meet when they go back in time about 1,000 years and find this pharaoh in ancient Egypt, and then they discover that he ascended to his pharaohhood because he was also a time traveler, and so brought a lot of technology that then allowed him to dominate the Egyptians. And so there's this kind of cool time travel story that happens. Well, years and years later, we find out that Rama Tut is actually a Kang variant. And so what's really neat about this book is that technically, this is actually the first appearance of Kang. It predates his first full appearance, what is considered to be his first appearance, which is the Grail, and so we'll get to that in a minute, by, I think, like 2 months. And I wonder, I don't know if the plan was eventually for this guy to be Kang, or later on they decided, hey, let's make all these time travelers Kang. I'd really be interested in finding that out. I don't know. If you know anything about the history of that, tell me in the comments below. But this is his first appearance. Plus, this book also has significance because it contains the first time that Stan Lee ever uses the phrase "nuff said" in his special announcement section. And if you're like me and you just like collecting some of these weird quirks from comic history, then it's another reason to look to this book. So that brings us to the Grail that I alluded to before, which is of course King's first full true appearance as King in Avengers number 8. And obviously this is a great book to own for any King fan, for any Avengers fan, because this is kind of the beginning of him becoming arguably the greatest Avengers villain of all time. I'm curious, another thing you can leave in the comments below, who do you think is the greatest Avengers villain of all time? Is it Kang? Is it Ultron? Is it Loki? Someone else? What do you think? Tell me in the comments. Now I've got 5 bonus keys for you as well, and we're going to get started off with Avengers number 2 from the 6th volume, which has one of the best Kang covers of all time, illustrated by the great Alex Ross, and just shows all of the main Kang variants just lined up all on one cover. And it's so beautiful and an affordable key for any Kang fan. Next, we've got Avengers number 267, which is one of my favorite Kang books, and really I probably should have included it in the original 5, but I've talked about this book many times before on this channel, and so I wanted to spice it up a little bit. But this contains the first appearance of the Council of Kings, and I really do believe at some moment in the MCU, we're going to have this scene or this whole movie where you've just got tons of Kangs coming together, working together, figuring out how to conquer all the multiverse. And this is kind of the beginning of that story in comics. And so I love it, and I think it's a great book to have in your collection. And that brings me to my 3rd bonus key, which is just the next issue, Avengers number 268. And this is continuing, obviously, the storyline from 267. But what I like about this is that it is the story that is called the Kang Dynasty, which, of course, is the name of the next Avengers movie. And I'm really interested to see if that movie is basically going to be this story on the big screen, or if they're just borrowing the title and we're going to have kind of a totally different new story in the movie. It's going to be really interesting, but at least that title starts in this book. So again, a pretty affordable key to add to your collection. Now for these last 2, we're once again going to take a jump in price. And so for my 4th bonus key, we're going to talk about Avengers number 10, which contains the first appearance of yet another King variant, Immortus. And this is a character that you don't find out until years later that it's actually a King variant. And so again, like I mentioned earlier, I wonder, was that the plan for Immortus from the beginning? I kind of doubt it was, because I think it was decades later that he's termed a King. And so I think at some point Marvel said, hey, let's just take all these time travelers, retcon them, they're King. It'll make things a little easier, and it'll just make him, a much tougher, badder character. And so blend them all together. And so you have the first appearance of Immortus here. And I think out of all the variants, other than obviously the main King, I personally think this is the one that's most likely to show up in the MCU. I would be surprised if he doesn't at some point. Even the King variant in the Loki series, which was called He Who Remains, had like similar clothing and color scheme to Immortus. And so I think at some point we're going to see him. And if you think that too, or again, obviously this is just an early Silver Age Avengers, so this book's always going to be desired by people. A great book to add to your collection. And so for my final bonus key, we've got Young Avengers number 1, which contains the first appearance of yet another King variant, Iron Lad. But this book is obviously awesome for a number of reasons, because it contains not only his first appearance, but also the first appearance of many of the other Young Avengers, including Patriot, Kate Bishop, Wiccan, and Hulkling. And 2 of those characters have already debuted in the MCU. I guess technically 3 Wiccan as a boy has. And so this is an awesome book to have for many reasons if you're a fan of any of those characters. And in fact, it's one of the ones that I've got on the top of my list to get in 2023. Well, before I leave, I wanted to show off one of these keys that I recently picked up. And so which one was it? Well, it's this one, Fantastic Four number 19, which contains the first appearance of Rama Tut. And like I said earlier, technically the first appearance of Kang. And I got a super great deal on this book. And I think it could be a really helpful story to think about when you're out hunting for comics. So the person who sold this to me had inherited a collection from her father, and she was trying to sell these books almost a year ago. And I saw her make a listing online, and so I reached out to her. And she was obviously non-experienced, and so I think she had the books priced a little higher than they should have been. And so even though I wanted this book then, I had to pass. And it seems like that was the case for a lot of other potential buyers. Well, I let a few months go by, and I thought, hey, it doesn't hurt to shoot over an email just to say, you still have these comics you're looking to sell? And in fact, she did. And I guess at that point, she had become, kind of frustrated at not being able to sell them. And so I actually got a greater deal than I even originally thought I would. And so super happy about that. And I'll show a couple of other books that I picked up from her as well. And she inherited a huge collection. So these are just a few. I'm really hoping to continue to buy from her. Both to obviously add some cool books to my collection, but to make it a little easier for her to move it as well, because I know that's, I think, what she wants to do. We also have Fantastic Four number 46, which contains the first full appearance and cover appearance of Black Bolt. And this one isn't in quite as good of a condition as the other one, but it still looks, it looks really nice. But it has some creasing and some wear, and it's obviously a Silver Age book. And then I also got my second copy of Fantastic Four number 72, and this is an upgrade from the one I had already. And so I'll be looking to move that other copy. That's kind of what I try to do. I buy in books at whatever grade I can get a good deal on, and then hopefully over time I find a deal on a higher grade, and I buy it and then sell off the lower one. And finally, we have a much more modern book, Fantastic Four number 204, which contains the first appearance of a couple of members of the Nova Corps, Queen Adora, who's the Prime Commandant of the Nova Corps, and then Tonic Vault. And so it's just a book that I've been looking for and super happy to add to my collection, and gets me one step closer to completing my 200s Fantastic Four run, which I'm getting super close to doing that, and so really glad to have that book. Well, that's going to bring me to an end of this video. Of course, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I'd appreciate if you would consider doing so. Like the video, comment, tell me which of these books you like the most, or just another King book that you really love that you think we should all consider adding to our collection. As always, thanks for watching, and I enjoyed it and look forward to seeing you in the next one.